This is The Outlook. LGBTI news, views and culture brought to you by Newshub. Welcome everyone, this is episode 2 of The Outlook. Firstly, thanks to everyone for the feedback for episode 1. And if you want to send us any more of that, theoutlook@mediaworks.co.nz is how you can do it. This week, Marja Lubeck, an MP who is calling for change. Mike Puru, the only man to leave The Bachelor without a rose. David Seymour, the MP who's going to try and explain why he's against making gay conversion therapy illegal. And Chris Parker, who is packing his bags and heading to Ferndale. Firstly, Mike, how's it going?
It is fantastic to be on this podcast.
Yes.
Episode number 2.
Yeah.
Out of the gates, and here we go. No, it's an honour. It's a great honour. And just so nice to have a voice too, I think.
That's right.
That's the whole purpose of this. And after listening to episode 1, I was excited about where this can go, what subjects can be covered, and the guests that you're going to have. So very honoured to be here.
So we'll start off with the first topic for this week, which is gay conversion therapy. A petition has been delivered to Parliament in an attempt to have the practice banned in New Zealand. Obviously, something you'd support, or?
Well, definitely. I mean, I know we're going to talk to this politician very soon, a couple of politicians on this issue. For me, it's something that I didn't know was as widespread as it is. So I think awareness of the practice and the fact that people know that it's even happening is probably a good place to start. I love the politicians' take on it. What's her name again? I can't pronounce it.
Marja Lubeck.
Marja Lubeck, yes, that's it. I love what she's doing, but in some respects too, and I don't know whether this is a statement I say very often, but I agree with David Seymour in some respects of his conversation as well. I just think that people need to be aware that it shouldn't happen. Do we need to make it law? I don't know about that, but it's a great start to the conversation.
So we put this information to David Seymour. He's definitely not in support of making the process illegal. We spoke to him earlier on, and this is what he had to say. Where do you stand on this idea to ban gay conversion therapy?
Oh, look, I'm opposed to gay conversion therapy. I think it's odious and medieval. However, it's one of those things where you may be opposed to the practice, but not necessarily in favour of government prohibition. And people make similar arguments around abortion and drugs and a number of other things. It's just that prohibition is clunky, it creates perverse incentives, it invades privacy, and it's difficult to enforce, and it's ineffective. So I'm not in favour of the government making a law banning gay conversion therapy, because if you make a law and you want it to be taken seriously, it has to be enforced. But to have inspectors going into counselling and trying to work out if something that delicate and private is adhering to a law, I think is unworkable. And so the way to stop gay conversion therapy is actually awareness and lobbying rather than trying to enforce it with prohibition.
You were saying that it would be quite hard to go in there and work out essentially if a counselling session is basically gay conversion therapy. So do you think that there are counsellors that are actually doing that at the moment, or is it more religious organisations, do you think?
Well, again, I mean, are you going to start going into the churches and trying to work out the difference between the normal pastoral services that churches offer to people, not necessarily my cup of tea, but it is very important to a lot of people, and gay conversion therapy? And, it's interesting, Marja Lubeck, and I admire her for putting in a substantial private members' bills. Most people put in private members' bills about lost luggage and other pointless stuff. She's taking on a tough issue, so good on her. But Marja Lubeck approached me and said, what do you think about this? I said, look, I just don't think it's workable. So she subsequently put a line in her bill that said, this bill will not prohibit legitimate counselling. So you now need the government and its agents to go around deciding what legitimate counselling is. And I just don't think that we want to give the state those sorts of powers to invade our privacy.
How then would you essentially try and get rid of gay conversion therapy?
Well, I think what you've got to do is be loud and be proud in favour of people being able to be who they want to be. That's why I've marched in the Pride Parade for the last several years, because I think it's important people can see that you can be a straight member of Parliament and go out and participate in the Pride Parade, showing people that actually there is nothing wrong with anybody's sexuality so long as they are doing things that are consensual and don't harm others. And that's the kind of activity that I think politicians can do, passing laws to have inspectors going around trying to determine the nature of counselling and pastoral care is only going to lead to either ineffectiveness or a gross invasion of privacy.
When we last spoke, you likened banning gay conversion therapy to banning hitting yourself in the hand with a hammer. Do you think that they are on the same level of seriousness in terms of their effect?
Well, hitting yourself with a hammer could be very harmful, as can gay conversion therapy. I'm not sure it really helps us to try and get into a comparison of which one is the most harmful. I think the point I was trying to make when I made the comparison is that there are lots of stupid things that people do, but not all of them are practical for the state to, first of all, ban, and second of all, enforce the ban. And sometimes when the state tries to do that, it actually creates more harm than good. And that's my view on the prohibition of abortion. That's my view on prohibition of assisted dying. I think sometimes you've actually got to give people choice and let them exercise it, because the prohibition leads to worse outcomes than the original activity.
What about in situations where teenagers or even younger are put into this therapy by their parents? It can have a huge effect, and obviously on mental illness, and even in the worst case scenario, suicide. What can be done there? I mean, the child or teenager, they're not in a position where they can say, hey, this is wrong. Their parents are making them do it. How could you stop that?
Well, it may be that you can't. Nobody here is saying that gay conversion therapy is good. I'm strongly opposed to it. But it may well be that the effects of having a ban, taking the ban seriously, which means you've got to have agents of the state going around trying to work out what is legitimate counselling and pastoral care and what isn't, will do more harm than any good it ever does. On the other hand, what we do need to do is have decent sexuality education in schools. We need to have a culture where people can be proud to be who they want to be. That's how you get a more open society. Having the state and its agents running around trying to work out what legitimate counselling and pastoral care is, I don't think will get us there.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, you would obviously agree that if a counsellor was suggesting you'd be able to fix some of your issues by essentially becoming straight, you'd disagree with a counsellor doing that, right?
Oh, I completely disagree with that. I think it's very well established that people's sexuality is innate. It's not something that they can just kind of choose. And so, they're simply wrong to give that advice. And they're also bigoted because they're somehow suggesting that one sexual orientation is somehow higher or better than another, which is also wrong. So I'm personally completely opposed, but this is not an issue. It's much like the prohibition of drugs. I don't think anybody should smoke marijuana. I just happen to think the prohibition of marijuana has had questionable benefits.
And finally, do you have a position on the... there's been one story around the LGBTI community in the last week, the board saying that the police should not be able to march in their uniform. Do you have any thoughts or position on that?
Yeah, I think the people organising the Pride Parade are a bunch of muppets, and they're actually drawing circles to exclude people when they should be drawing circles to include people. And so I think they've made a mistake, and good on the guy that resigned in protest. The X Party has actually been trying to organise a float to march in the parade, and we're now reconsidering it because we don't want to be part of such an exclusionary event.
Yeah, so by the sounds of it, with you saying that you're thinking of not taking part, it is going to have a negative effect on the event if this decision stays in place, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to draw circles to include more people. That's the politics of inclusion. They are drawing circles to exclude people. Now, are the New Zealand police perfect in terms of their attitudes towards sexuality? Probably not. Can the organisers tell us any organisation that is? I doubt it. That's why we're actually all in this together and need to be inclusive. I just think the decision they've made is actually taking the movement backwards, much like I think it was about 3 years ago we had the parade held up for about an hour while some people protested about pride in prisons. Stopped me enjoying the event and delayed me getting a beer for about an hour. Made the whole event much less enjoyable. And what point did they make?
That was David Seymour, and interesting, Mike, that he brought up the topic of the Pride Parade versus the New Zealand Police, and the huge revelation that the ACT Party float might be pulled out of the parade. I find this huge news.
Well, he has, for a lot of the Pride parades, being there in support. And
yes, he has.
I think it's the first time I actually seen the man in real life. I didn't realise how short of stature he is, actually. But I was thinking, good on you, David Seymour, for being part of that. But if the ACT Party were to pull out of that Pride parade, you are so right. On their float, what would there be? Even if he was in it, because there's not much going on in the ACT Party. He's pretty much a one-man band, isn't he? So he'll be driving a float that's got nothing on the back. So maybe he should just drive the car that leads the float and set the pace.
I think maybe he'll just tag along to the end of the National Party. Possibly.
No, but he made some interesting points in his chat about gay conversion, because that's the thing. I mean, how ridiculous is it that we need a law to actually stop this type of carry-on, because it just shouldn't be happening. Gay conversion, I mean, what on earth is that? It's just ridiculous. If it was something that worked and people were signing up and spending money to do it, I don't think there'd be many people that want to do it. We live in a different world nowadays. It's crazy. And I think, it's crazy to think it even happens.
I do agree that, just because something is bad or stupid, you don't have to outlaw it. But you need to try and find a way to stop it. And again, it comes for me back down to the teenagers and the children whose parents are sending them off to America or sending them to some rogue counsellors around New Zealand and going through this process. If it was illegal, they would essentially be able to stand up to their parents and say, hey, you can't send me to that, it's illegal. Whereas at the moment, they really don't have any comeback.
True, but if you were in a situation where your mum and dad thought that gay conversion therapy was right, then there's some bigger issues going on in your family, I think. But and you are so right about that. That's what I mean in terms of a good starting point for a conversation. So even the fact that this law could get pulled out of the ballot, the fact that the discussions are happening with politicians, it raises awareness. So hopefully the parents or the religious sectors that perhaps partake in this type of gay conversion therapy, they are aware that the public of the world think that this is not a good thing, and hopefully through public pressure it'll stop without laws having to be in place. If you put a law in place, it means that it's happening a lot, and that concerns me.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
But it needs to stop.
Yeah. I sent an email to every MP in Parliament about this issue to find out what side they stood on. Interestingly, basically, I got an email back from all Labour MPs saying that they'll support it. David Seymour, obviously, he got in touch very quickly and gave his point of view. The National Party have said that they will discuss it in caucus if it is pulled out of the ballot. And at that point, they will work on their opinion and decision on that one.
If I was a parent listening right now and I wanted to send my kids to gay conversion therapy, do I Google it? Does it come up?
Oh, yeah, I would. Interesting, because apparently, obviously, it's unethical to offer this treatment.
Right, so they keep it all hush-hush.
So if you are a registered psychologist or counsellor or anything, it can't be known that you offer this service.
Right.
So in some ways, yes, it has to be done in that sort of way, and that's when it seems to be done more through a church, because they aren't registered in any way as being a counselling service, so you could probably get away with it a bit easier by doing it that way.
And look, honestly, if there are any people listening right now who are facing that situation, then reach out to the support services around you.
Yeah.
Reach out to even, your Labour politician that clearly is going to support you, and, know that you have the love and support of many people to stop that from happening. It's not good for your mental psyche.
Yeah.
Mental health is a big issue in this country, and you don't want to be adding extra layers of complexity by some person that thinks that they can sit you down and talk you out of being gay. It just doesn't happen like that.
No. If you are in that situation, sneak away on your phone for a second and just send a text to Rainbow Youth or something like that,
or
and start
here.
the conversation.
Even here.
I mean, get in
we'd
touch
love
with
to hear
us.
from you.
Yeah. So the MP we've just been talking about that introduced the bill, that's Marja Lubeck. We spoke to her earlier on about how this process began.
Well, when you're looking at conversion therapy in general, it was actually from a TV program in June that made it very clear that it's really surprisingly easy to find places that have conversion therapy, that offer it. And so it is a damaging practice. It's widely condemned in other countries, and it's really a practice we shouldn't be having in New Zealand.
How would you police it? That's been some of the response that I've had from the other side of the argument is, are you going to be marching into every counselling session and listening in to find out what exactly their message is?
No, but I think when you look at compliance of other laws, that's not what we do either. An example I mentioned previously is, for example, speeding. You're not catching every single person that is necessarily speeding, but people know that it's illegal. You shouldn't be doing it. It can cause very big damage and consequences. And as such, people should be aware of the fact that it's not allowed, not legal.
So tell us the process about how we got to here. There was a petition that was presented at Parliament, and then just so for people listening, what's the process now?
That's right. So the petition was started by the Rodney Rainbow Group up north and joined by Young Labour, Young Greens, and fantastic to see young people putting their energy behind such a good cause. 20,000 signatures were presented to Parliament. I was very lucky because I was able to turn that into a members' bill. Did a lot of cross-party work, and that bill was went into the ballot last week, called the Prohibition of Conversion Therapy. And what we do now is we have our fingers crossed that on Members' Days that bill will get drawn out of the biscuit tin and will be a bill that goes through the usual process, first reading, select committee, and hopefully eventually result in conversion therapy not happening in New Zealand.
And for those listeners who would have picked up on the reference to a biscuit tin, that is actually how it's done, isn't it?
It's funny because I was just at the school this morning and I had a picture of that tin with me, and they were absolutely astounded. It's an old Decca tin. It's blue and white, and it's got a little worn label on it saying members' bills. And that's what we do. Our tickets go in there, our little tokens, bingo tokens, and it gets drawn out. Yeah.
And the fact that it's from Decca just makes it so
classic New Zealand.
So New Zealand.
Absolutely.
What damage can this do to people who are either in this treatment or have been pushed or pressured into it?
Yeah, so ever since my attention was drawn to the fact that this practice does happen in New Zealand, I've talked to a lot of stakeholders and community groups and individuals that have gone through it. And it's really awful to hear the stories of people that basically have been told and been given the message that there's something wrong with the way they're feeling, whether it's same-sex attraction or whether it's gender identity issues. They get the message reinforced that something is wrong with them, they're broken, they need to be fixed. And that is very different from a positive counselling where people are supported and where people are basically accepted for who they are, and that's why conversion therapy can do a lot of damage. We've heard that from, for example, the New Zealand Association of Counsellors, the New Zealand Association of Psychotherapists, who have told us that the people they see who have gone through conversion therapy need a lot of undoing. So there's a lot of damage done to them, and their job, in fact, is a lot harder. That's what they're telling me, because of that damage that has been done through conversion therapy.
Who is it that is essentially practicing this? So when David Seymour mentioned that they would be going into counselling sessions across the country, are registered counsellors actually partaking in this therapy, or is it some other organisations that aren't necessarily registered? And is there something you could possibly do then if it is someone who's a registered practitioner? You could do something about that?
Sure. Look, the registered practitioners, the counsellors, psychotherapists, they have been very clear and have publicly stated that this kind of therapy or treatment is against any of the ethical requirements. So it goes contrary to their code of ethics. So they shouldn't be practicing it. But of course, we don't always know where it's happening. The examples that we saw in the TV program, and when I speak to people, is that it's also happening through church movements, perhaps parents referring their children. But whether it's a well-meaning teacher or another professional, they should really understand that this is not something that will work, and it actually is really damaging.
Finally, what rights, what can a young person do, or even a teenager, or someone that is being essentially in a position where their parents are, in some cases I've heard they get sent to America to these extreme camps where they, which is an ironic term for it, where they try and take out this therapy, go through the process. What can these young people do? They can't, they don't necessarily have the strength to stand up for themselves and say, no, this isn't right. What can they do?
Well, and I think that is where this bill and this law would be really important. I know people have asked me about, what is the punishment, what is the financial fines or whatever you have in this bill. But more importantly, it's us sending a signal as a country that we don't believe that people should be going through these kind of treatments. And reinforce that message that just because of the way they feel about another sex or about their own identity, there's something wrong with them. And this bill would then give people the opportunity to say, hold on, Mum and Dad, you're telling me that I should be doing this treatment or this practice, but actually there is a law in New Zealand that says that that is not a good thing. So at the moment we don't have that. And there's plenty of countries where we do have that. There's in fact states in Canada, America. We even have a bill in front of the Irish Upper Senate at the moment that is exactly as this bill, looking at not allowing that practice to happen.
Marja Lubeck, I really hope that this gets pulled out of that decadence sometime soon. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was Marja Lubeck, who spoke to us just a few hours ago, and it really is nice to see not only someone taking this issue on board, but a List MP actually picking an issue and starting to fight for it. I think that's really awesome to see.
Yeah, and she said a lot of great things there. What a wonderful lady, what a wonderful MP. Thank you, Marja.
And very friendly as well. She
nice.
had our photo on Twitter within seconds. It was great.
Great.
Now onto something a lot less serious than what's been on the rest of the show. We're heading out to Ferndale. Now, Mike, are you a fan of Shortland Street?
I dip in and out of Shortland Street, but it has been one of my staple favourites for the past 25 years, 26. Yeah. How long has it been on? Absolutely love it. I think they start conversations in New Zealand. They tackle issues that perhaps we as a country don't want to face, and all of a sudden is on the telly screen. And for it to all of a sudden be on stage as a musical, I can't wait.
Do you have a favourite character out of all of these years of the show?
Well, I think it was Carl Urban.
Yes,
who played. Was he playing a gay ambulance driver?
He was. Yes.
And I was quite young at the time, and I thought for the first time in my life there was a good-looking young man who was, kicking around in life on screen, and I had this massive crush on him secretly. Didn't tell anybody, but I loved it. He's one of my favourite characters. Lionel Skeggins would have been another one of my favourite characters.
He's in the musical.
Over the years.
He's in the musical.
Angela Bloomfield, Rachel McKenna. She's a sweetheart. So lots of favourite characters.
It's interesting you mentioned the Carl Urban character, because I think my first TV crush was Jonathan McKenna, who he was going out with in the show.
Yes. so Shortland Street, responsible for stirring a lot of young gay men into what they actually feel.
And speaking of gay men in Shortland Street, we spoke to Chris Parker today, who is taking part in the musical.
We don't care if you're queer or bi,
young or old,
black or white.
we're all about diversity. We're an inclusive community at Shortland.
Ferndale's a little town.
We can't help but sleep around. We all admit we screwed the crew.
Although it's awkward for a bit,
It's what we do at Shortland Street.
So, Chris Parker, we're here in the outside the theatre. We're about to start the Shortland Street Musical.
Yes.
Are you excited?
I am thrilled. It's a great time of year to be doing a show because it's Christmas and everyone wants to go out and have a few drinks, and what better show than a musical, an original Kiwi musical? I just feel like it just ticks all the boxes in terms of what you want to be doing for the end of the year.
We were going to be doing the interview inside, but we've been bumped out. Is it you, or is it me, or is it quite humid here?
I think it is me. We've been we're low priority, Chris Warner and stuff. They get the good spot, and then us extra characters, we just get put upstairs in the hot. It's this theatre is stunning though. It's just covered in glass. It's like being in a oven.
Chris Warner's probably staying at the penthouse suite nearby, though, right?
Yeah, that's what I like to think. I like to think that all Shortland Street spirits of past and present are all just floating around the waterfront.
Did you watch the show when you were younger?
I did a bit.
Yeah.
When I was sort of 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Not when I was a baby. I was circa, Tony and Chris.
Right.
When Tony died, it was the saddest thing that had ever happened.
And that came out of the blue as well.
Really, pulled on the old heartstrings. I was very much into Maya, and I really loved that little lesbian storyline we had for a while. And then, obviously, I was watching it as a teenager during the Joey Henderson Ferndale Strangler time, and so obviously that was, one of the biggest storylines I've ever had on the show, and I get the honour of playing him in a number about villains.
That is amazing.
It's the greatest honour.
Is there a character on the show from all the way back that you feel like you identify with most?
Great. Probably Gerald, was it? Harry McNaughton. That character went on a real journey. He was asexual in the end.
He was
right?
asexual, yes.
Bless. But I felt like they were really trying to I felt like he was going to be gay for a while, and then it was maybe he's bisexual, and then but I quite like that. It took me a while for me to really land in my sexuality, and for a while there I was maybe I just don't have a high sex drive, or maybe I'm asexual, and I definitely thought that for a while. It was potentially could have been something I would have fit into. I really related to that for some reason, and also I remember it was Libby and stuff were really forcing his sexuality on him. It's always your straight friends who are listen, let's just take you out, find you a man, you can kiss him in the weekend, and then we'll just deal with your sexuality like that, versus it being your own personal journey. So I quite related to that thing of other people trying to fix your sexuality for you versus you just having to find it in yourself. And Harry McNaughton is just perfect, isn't he?
Yes.
What a perfect specimen.
Oh, he sure is. He was on the show last week.
Yeah.
So another reason to tune in.
This
it is.
community, we are just so close, aren't we? Too close.
I think it's really important for what I love about the show is that it gets into the regions with some really progressive issues, sexuality, drug use, all that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. It's these conversations we're having nowadays are really sophisticated, and if you are up with the knowledge, if you know what cisgender, transgender means, you can progress really far in terms of these conversations. The stuff that's accessible to you on the internet, it's all the time, every day. You can just develop your understanding and broaden your understanding of how gender, sexuality, any kind of identity works. And what I think is tricky is, for people who live not in high-density metropolitan areas to be up to speed with that conversation. And what I think Shortland Street does that's remarkable is, brings it out and makes it accessible by putting it inside of characters who we have grown to love, and we know on a personal level. So it feels like someone in our family is kind of going through that issue, and so I feel like there is. Because people laugh at Shortland Street a lot for it being trashy or terrible, but I'm low key, it's highly sophisticated in terms of what it's doing and the way that it's doing it. It's providing these conversations in a way that anyone can access them, and I feel like that's really important. And now I talk to my parents around the terms of what transgender are, and I don't have to say you don't have to say transgender. You just say they're they're transgender, or just say they're male or they're female. Like you don't even have to really ping that, and you don't need to kind of cringe when you say trans. You can just be really kind of like relaxed and comfortable with these terms, and I feel like Shortland Street does a really good job of that. Keeps them floating around and keeps that conversation right at the front of New Zealand's kind of media, which I think is really important too.
Quick fire question.
Okay, I'm going to clear my mind for this.
The first album you ever bought?
It was a compilation album. No, it was a clarinet album of because I played the clarinet at the time, and it was in Brisbane. I was on a school trip. We went to this school of music place, and there was a quartet. I bought an EP for $5 of a clarinet ensemble. How mortifying.
I'm glad that you said you played the clarinet, because had you not, that story would have been a bit
weird. Yeah.
Weird. Yeah.
It was still weird that I bought that EP. I was quite proud of myself. I was like, I'm supporting up and coming musicians. I was 10.
Do you collect anything?
Balls of hair. No, kidding. I collect... no, I don't.
No?
I try and get rid of as much as I can.
Minimalist.
Old receipts for GST purposes.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Finally, have dinner with 3 people, living or dead. Who would they be?
Oh, my goodness. Dolly Parton, Barbara Streisand, and Judy Garland for drama.
You're so butch.
I know. Can you believe I play an All Black in this show? Of course, the only way that I play an All Black is in a musical theatre show. Come on.
That was Chris Parker. We headed down to the ASB Waterfront Theatre to have a chat with him. He was very busy doing rehearsals, so we thank him very much for that time, and thank you as well, Mike Puru.
Oh, thank you. No, great to be here. Mark Hadlow's in that Shortland Street musical as well. He's a legend.
Yes.
The only thing I've seen of this musical so far is Dancing Muffins, and I kind of thought, what is this show going to be like? But from all accounts, it's quite spectacular and funny, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
I think that the opening number, which I was lucky enough to see earlier today, could quite possibly become a New Zealand anthem.
Oh, no way.
It is just so New Zealand.
Lisa Chappell, is she in this
Yes.
as well? So you got some big names, haven't you? Chris Parker, Lisa Chappell, Blaze Clockworthy, he's another superstar. Watch out for him. It'll be a great show. Speaking of Shortland Street,
yes.
Just before you go, I found out that there is a dame in New Zealand who absolutely loves Shortland Street. When I asked her the other day what her go-to TV show was, she embarrassingly told me it was Shortland Street. You will find out who that is.
It's a tease.
It is a tease. You'll find out which dame that is when I'm filling in for Radio Live the week before Christmas. So make sure you tune in and have a listen.
Putting it in my diary now. Now I can hear these people running towards the studio. It's the bosses saying, stop talking about a show that's on another channel, so we better get going. Thanks for coming in, and everyone, if you need any information, head to newshub.co.nz/podcasts. There you'll see the Outlook, and there'll be a list of phone numbers and information just in case any of the topics we've brought up are a bit too close to the heart and something you want to talk about. Until next episode, keep being yourself.
Please, 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 please. Please tell me that is not your penis. Penis. Not your penis. Penis. Not your penis. Penis. Not your penis. Penis. Please tell me that is not your penis.